All right. Welcome to the first episode of the podcast we're calling Truth Unrestricted. That's may change as we go. We'll see. But for right now, that's what it's being called. And we're going to tell everyone what the hell we're doing here. I'm here with my good friend, Jeff. I'm Spencer. How you doing, Jeff?
Thank you for having me, good sir.
Um, I'm just getting over the dreaded COVID, so my voice isn't 100% just yet. But
How'd that go for you?
oh, it's
No, I don't, thankfully.
yeah, well, good. It's for me, it was just as bad as very bad flu, and
Yeah.
hopefully it's getting better every day, and hopefully in another couple of days, and I'll be out of the box. Till then, I'm locked in my room. Loads of fun. Anyway, so what the hell are we doing on this podcast? We want to talk about this world that we're in and the fact that we have ourselves like this is how I explain to other people when I'm explaining this is that the zeitgeist is this ethereal thing, just the collection of ideas that are in society is kind of the zeitgeist, right? It's just kind of the collection, right? So we don't have one zeitgeist. It's almost like we have two distinct zeitgeists in our society, except that that's not even true either. We have Everyone really has their own zeitgeist now, thanks to the social media, whirlwind we're all in. Everyone has their own unique set of facts, and some of those are very close to what other people have, but everyone has their own now. And it's getting to be an increasing level of madness in this thing when you talk to anyone about this stuff, because they'll feel even more certain every day that what they think is true, and they never question it, and you can't make any progress.
Well,
And
it's
so
because it's so easy to get access to a plethora of information on any topic to feed confirmation bias.
yeah, confirmation bias is the thing that's going to come up a lot in this on this podcast. So it's and what we have with our search engines and our Facebook feeds and Twitter feeds and all of that is essentially a giant confirmation bias engine that is just working, a machine learning computer that's working to find out what you like and give you more of it, and confirm all the things that you already feel, even if they're wrong.
Yep. And
That,
put you in nice, comfortable little echo chambers where you can all
yeah.
preach the same common philosophy to your tribe.
And everyone who's listening to this says, yeah, all those other people, they have that. I gotta say, everyone has it. Everyone has these biases that are being confirmed, and you have to work really hard to. So that's what we're going to talk about here is trying to break past that and take individual things and pull them apart. So before I get too deep into any of the meat and potatoes of that, this is just an introduction. I have some rules of engagement for this podcast. Rules of engagement, ways that I intend to carry on these conversations. So some simple rules. First rule,
Okay.
no hyperbole. Everyone loves to say that they're putting in 110% effort. No one actually puts in more than 100% of their effort.
I'll be honest, if we get into anything philosophical, I'm really going to struggle with that.
A lot of people will,
best.
And other people have seen something a million times. Yeah, I know. But it's the point now where everyone just goes to a bigger number to double and triple confirm the thing that they're doing. And it becomes like the childhood game of, my dad's bigger than your dad. And we have to stick to, things.
No, that's fair. I dig that.
And
that's fair.
It's part of our lexicon to the point where most people like you haven't even thought about the way in which you're doing it. And you get immediately annoyed whenever I point it out. But nevertheless, in this space, I'm going to try to point it out and, tone it down. And we try to stick to like grounded things. So that's the first one. The second rule is no name calling and no insults. And I don't really mean like just between like the people having a conversation like me and you. I mean,
and
like,
subjects of the conversation as
yeah,
well. Like
yeah. There's a
refer to ex-President Donald Trump as,
that orange
ex-President Donald
bloated
Trump or Mr.
pumpkin
Trump.
headed. Yeah, those we don't. Yeah, there's no need to. If you don't have actual substantial things to complain about, then you shouldn't be embellishing them with other insults. It's not necessary.
Mhm.
You see that all the time on forums everywhere on the internet, and it bothers me a lot. And we're just not going to do it here. This is the next rule, the big rule, really, for me. Nothing is sacrosanct, and everything can be questioned.
Including this list of rules.
Yes, of course. I can justify every rule. Of course. Yeah. And absolutely, that's good. That's why I have you here, because you will call me on things that I'm not focusing on well enough or not justifying well enough or whatever. Like, it's, yeah. Absolutely. And that's going to be a thing that's, well, it's probably the thing that's going to get us into most trouble.
on an episodic basis, we're basically going to like pick a piece of
our social world
and pick it apart.
Yeah. That's
ideally in a debate style format where we can take contrary positions and argue our cases.
Sure. But not,
or just more of a mutual philosophical
club, right?
Exploration. We might find ourselves on the opposite side, and let's just see what that looks like.
Oh yeah, when we're on the opposite side, that'd be great. But what I would encourage everyone to do is try to look at the opposite side of their own view. Like, a fundamental question that everyone should ask themselves is, how do I know the things that I know? I ask myself that all the time. How do I know the things that I know? There's things that I'm sure about. And I think to myself, how is it that I'm so sure about this thing? There's, and I come to some surprising conclusions to myself sometimes. And sometimes I actually come to the conclusion that I can't support that with anything. I don't actually know that I know it. I don't, it's not I can't find anything that really supports it. And then I have to put it in the maybe category. And, it might be something I like, but that's too bad if it's not something I can support with facts that I could point to other people that, it's not a thing that's true. And that's how science works. It doesn't matter who said a thing. If it's just, if it's not really true, it's not really true.
Well, and I do appreciate both the scientific approach and the lost art of civil debate, because I see far too little of both of those things in most public discourse.
Yeah.
And like, as you know, I was very active in my local labor movement for a number of years. And like, I ground my teeth sometimes at union meetings when I heard like that sort of hyperbolic rhetoric. And it's anyways, you're probably going to have an entire episode about tribalism, right? So I guess we could discuss that there.
Oh,
but like, it's sort of a good backdrop for like justification for the purpose of this list, right? These are definitely behaviors we don't want to slip into, because it's things we're going to be criticizing.
Yeah. So another rule that I have in my everyday thinking that I'm definitely going to institute here is that there's a sort of idea in the world today that the natural things that occur naturally are all good and well, and that we should always look to the natural world as an example of how to live and how to like the world's the natural world is in balance.
The good old days when Homo sapiens lived to age 30.
Yeah. Well, and like that's the law of the jungle, and like that's how it works, and that
buddy, me, I'm all
that they're all in balance, and really the jungle is not in balance. It is in balance, but it's not because of anything good that's happening there. There is so many things that would be considered, crimes against humanity happening in the jungle, between the animals that,
Mhm.
and we, if we are humans who are living above that, we need to not look at that as the reverence that
Yeah,
we,
exactly. Exactly. I always find it rather humorous when people try to simultaneously defend the position of being like all for the natural and also pacifists
yeah, yeah,
or vegans.
yeah,
Because the natural world is incredibly unfair and incredibly violent.
yeah.
What mankind brings to the table is our intelligence and ability of civility.
So the next rule is that ideas are more important than whoever communicates them. And
Oh,
really,
I'm all over that.
yeah, I mean, this is a thing everyone says, oh, well, so and so, famous person said this, Einstein said this, or whatever, and it's supposed to have much more weight. And then sometimes you look it up, and it's not even from Einstein. It's
Yeah.
you,
Don't
you
believe
know,
everything you see on the
yeah.
internet, Abraham
But
Lincoln.
also, if it made sense, why would it matter?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And along with this rule is that no one is inherently wrong. No one is wrong just because of who they are.
Mhm.
Hitler wasn't wrong because he was Hitler. He was wrong because he was wrong. And
Mhm.
Churchill wasn't on the right side because his name was Churchill. He was on the right side because he did the right things. He was, and so, I mean, this is just one example, but that's, you get the idea.
Yeah,
No one
for
is
sure.
wrong just because their name is thing X.
Mhm.
And right along with all those things, another thing I need to, I really like to get across to everyone is that no one is stupid. Everyone thinks. A lot of people, I think, are self-conscious about the things they think. They're a little gun shy about mentioning the things that they think, and that they, but oftentimes I've been able to talk to people and get them to really open up and, say a lot of really deep and intelligent things once they're confident that what they're saying is going to be heard and accepted. And
Yeah.
everyone is doing that. We all have a meat computer that's running actually pretty good, generally
Mhm.
speaking. Some of us have the wrong facts to work with.
Oh, that reminds me. There's a stand-up comedian, I can't remember who. He did a routine on as part of his routine about how like you know how like working class Americans have a generally accepted reputation of being, dumb yokels.
Yeah.
He made the point about like ask any working class American about the statistics of his favorite team or the roster of his favorite team or most hated team in his favorite sporting league, and that person will dazzle you with their ability at like photographic factual memorization.
Mm-hmm.
Like a baseball fan in America can spout a string of numeric statistics that would challenge some physicists.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm all over that. No one is stupid, but like you say,
Yeah.
lots of people have access to bad information and garbage in,
And
garbage out.
increasingly so now.
Yeah.
So the last rule on my list of rules, and I'm not going to guarantee that there won't be more rules made eventually, is that we're going to avoid invoking Godwin's law, which means we're going to avoid mentioning Hitler and Nazi Germany in reference to things are, oh, that's like it's as bad as Hitler, or that's as, in my
Mhm.
opinion, the only person who was really as bad as Hitler was Hitler. The
Yeah.
only people who were as bad as the Nazis were the Nazis.
Mhm.
And trying to, endlessly create allusions and comparisons to them is just more hyperbole in disguise, really. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna try to avoid that here. And if I have guests and they go there, then I'll have to rein them in. And that'll be up to me. So
I feel like I need to bring up the fact that in mentioning your previous point about ideas being more important than the person who communicates them, you already broke the rule about not mentioning Hitler. So I guess that's your one gimme. So I get
wait,
one.
How's that?
You can rewind and listen if you want to, man. You've already dropped the H bomb once.
Oh, well, I did it before I put the rule in place. Whatever. Let's move on.
Yes, sir.
All right. So my primary goal here is to unravel confirmation bias above all else. Mm-hmm. Everyone has confirmation bias. I have confirmation bias. Everyone who is an expert in confirmation bias has confirmation bias. They all have to work consciously to avoid it. It's if you're not aware that it's there, it's like a poker table. What they say about poker, what the experts say is that if you can't spot the sucker at the poker table, you are the sucker. If you can't spot your own confirmation bias,
you're in the middle of it.
You are well into it. You are so deep in. Yeah. So that's the first main goal. Yeah. Another one that kind of goes hand in hand with it, really, but is that there's a lot of deeply held assumptions in our world. And they, I have always questioned these my whole life. It drives everyone in my life nuts, my wife especially. And I have a rule in my life that traditions need a purpose. And if the purpose is no longer served, then you should consider no longer following the tradition.
Yeah.
What can happen is that some traditions can accumulate extra purposes along the way, and so its initial purpose might not be there, but it might have some other thing that it's doing now, like serving your community or something like that. But in general, traditions, they don't always need to be there. Some people say, oh, it's a tradition, we got to do it, it's a tradition. Well, just because it's a tradition doesn't mean you need to go ahead and do it.
Traditionally, we were cool with slavery. We tend to evolve as a species, I hope. Yeah. So I'm all over that.
So, some people will get uncomfortable when you take a deeply held belief of theirs and you just dive right into it and you pull it apart. They think that you're destroying it somehow. Mm-hmm. If you pull apart a belief and then you reconstruct it and you come up with the same thing that everyone always had, you still haven't wasted your time. Mm-hmm. You've essentially done a grade 10 science experiment where you question gravity, and if you did it right, you came up with, acceleration is 9.8 meters a second squared. You've reaffirmed that everything is well with the world. But if you didn't come up with the right thing, well, then maybe, you should reconsider, the thing that you're thinking. If you can't deconstruct your own thing and then reconstruct it from parts, then maybe it's not even really there. We're going to try to have anti-adversarial discussion. We try to disagree amicably. We're going to try that. I'd like that to be the case. That's not a thing that happens much anymore.
I think you could devote an entire episode to lamenting the death of civil debate in Western society. Yeah. That was I loved debate club in high school, man. There's nothing I like more than meeting someone with whom I disagree on a topic, who can intelligently defend their standpoint and intelligently deconstruct mine. It's like intellectual tennis. It's so much fun, but everybody gets so emotionally invested in what they believe is their facts now, that an argument against it is considered a personal attack.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then you need the safe space, right? Because you were personally attacked.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. Let's not do that in episode 1. We'll call it an episode 3 thing, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd like to be able to give voice to I'd like to think I'm the kind of person that can point out a flaw in my own argument and And I encourage everyone to do that same thing. Where your argument is weak, you should know where it's weak. If there's something that, some fact in the world that doesn't support your point of view, you should look at that thing and not avoid it, and not, and, I've seen people who retweet, resend memes on Facebook, and they know that they're false and they don't care. And then ask them why, and they say, "Oh yeah, but it supports my point of view."
This is making so like,
And
we were talking about goals, and like you express this as a willingness to give voice to untruths that support my own personal views, but we're coming out on the con side of that, right? Like that's not something we want to do. Like that's you're suggesting that as one of our rules of engagement or goals for this, that anything we bring to the table as supporting evidence must be open to rigorous fact checking.
Yes. Yeah. But this is like, people are now in this space where they are willingly and knowingly recommunicating falsehoods simply because they lean harder on their side of the political spectrum. And I need to point these out. I need to, like, even if it's a thing that doesn't support my own personal political view, I have to be able to point it out as an untruth and say, like, look, this, I might even enjoy if this was true, but it's just not. And you need to, like, this has to be a thing that we are able to do as a society. We're able to point to these things and say, look, they're just not true. Even if they'd be great if they were, they're just not true. And I wrote a thing on this on Facebook once. My next kind of goal is to take an anti-absolutist stance. I wrote this great thing once about a there being an absolute enemy, and that everyone has their absolute enemy now. They're being fed this thing. It was kind of one of the ideas that led to this podcast, but that everyone has, and most of the things you're told are now preceded with the side of the spectrum they're supposed to be on, so if they're told about a legislation, they almost always put who put the legislation in. Oh, Obama put this legislation in. Oh, Harper put this legislation in. And you're almost always supposed to interpret your, based on who put it in, who legislated it. And that's not supposed to be the case. You're supposed to evaluate these things based on their own merit individually, absent of whoever put them in. But
show me the last common democratic citizen who has read a bill before it becomes law.
Well, now the bills are obscenely long, almost because they don't want anyone to read them. Yeah, which is also another thing that doesn't need to be and yet is. But things don't have to be in an absolutist position of, we're never in a, if you're not with me, you're against me space. And I don't think anyone else should be either. We're all in this together, One goal that I have dear to my heart for this podcast is to start to develop what I call proper and useful definitions for things that we, terms we use every day. Mostly, the number one for me is trust. For me, trust is the concept that defines every social interaction we have. But all kinds of other things: intuition, racism, leadership. I mean, these are words we use all the time, but given different contexts, they can kind of mean different things sometimes. But almost everyone has a different definition of intuition. I almost guarantee it. Almost no one can, if you told 10 different people to just write down a definition of that, and then you compared them, you'd be like, wow, like that's, and the same would be true for trust, and probably definitely true for racism. And if you ask 10 random people to define leadership, but when we talk about these things, these are very important things. We need to be able to have sort of a way to talk about them where we're I mean, that's why
An
I think a lot of
agreement,
people
an
talk
agreement
past
on
each other.
common,
Yeah,
an agreement on common definitions and terms.
sure. Yeah. So
Like
I don't know.
most contracts and legal documents start with a preamble that's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
hey, when we say this word, this here precisely is what we mean when we say this word. And when we
Yeah.
say this word, we mean precisely this and nothing other than this. So yeah, I dig that.
So
Although that like deconstructing those terms would be an episode in and of
oh
itself,
yeah,
I think.
absolutely. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be episode 2 actually. And we're going to try to not swear that much. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that works.
I
Might
will do my
not work
best.
very well. I'm also a person who swears in his everyday life all the time, but I'd like this to be a podcast someone could, like I said, a podcast someone could be playing in their car while they're driving their kids to school and feel okay. You know what I mean? No worse than
That's
your
fair.
average radio station or whatever. Like,
I can say
yeah, maybe.
with 110% certainty
You're
that I will
trying
be
me now,
more
aren't you?
that I will be more guilty of fucking swearing than I will of hyperbole.
Yeah, right. You found that button
There,
and then you pushed it.
I got it out of my system. We'll call that
Yeah.
my age card.
Yeah, right. All right. So, generally speaking, there's an idea in the world that questioning a thing is the same thing as opposing that thing. And that idea needs to go away. At least it needs to go away
Oh, 100%.
in the conversations on this
needs to
podcast.
go away. Yeah,
Like
100%.
if we can't ask questions about a thing, we can't ever learn more about it. And never will our understanding increase. So obviously, we'll need to ask them sometimes very pointed or even some seemingly obtuse questions about some topics. That's a thing that'll happen.
Mhm.
And we have to be able to do that as a society, not just us on this podcast.
Mhm.
And, you know, that's part of the thing for me where nothing is absolutely sacrosanct. There's nothing that's sacrosanct. There's nothing,
Mhm.
you know, if you want to talk about racism, then we should just talk about racism. And it also, in that context, and everything I've said here today, it shouldn't matter what our color of skin is, or what our background is, or where we're from in the world. It could be that we don't have enough facts based on our life experiences. That may be, but
Oh, there's a line from an Aerosmith song that comes to mind.
mm.
If you can judge a wise man by the color of his skin, then mister, you're a better man than I.
Yeah. So basically, that's what we're going to be about here. And this is episode 1. I think we'll wrap it up here and call it good.
All right, fair play.
And we're going to try for one of these every week. So we'll see how that goes too. All right.
Looking forward to it, brother.
Until next time.
Cheers.